I think deaf people face discrimination. There's an attitude out there. So when I was younger, I was with 3 hearing friends, and we went to the car wash, and I said I wanted to apply for a job, and they hired my 3 hearing friends, and they didn't want to hire me, and they said, if you tell me what to do, I know what to do, so what's the problem? But my brother, who's hard of hearing and speaks very well like a hearing person, he was able to get a job, and so he was able to help me get a job. But today, services are a lot better. They hire people at places like Walmart, Target here in Flint. They have deaf people working there, so the changes have been made. I think it's a lot better today than it was a while ago. Attitudes have changed about deaf people, and I think that's true for all disability groups as well. While deaf people and how they adapt to their hearing loss, all of those situations vary. Most deaf people, 95%, marry other deaf people. When they're done with schooling or college, they go to work with hearing people, but sometimes they come home and they like to hang out with their deaf peers or go to the deaf club or go out with friends, because the main aspect of deaf culture is our language, American Sign Language, and that's what brings us together. Deaf people like me, I like to ride my motorcycle and hang out with deaf people, but I also have hearing friends that I hang out with. So we get together and do things, and the way that I was raised has a lot to do with it. I'm from a family of people with hearing loss. My brother is hard of hearing, and he tends to hang out with hearing people because he has a lot of hearing. I hang out more with deaf people because I have a more profound loss, and it just depends on the degree of hearing loss, and it's very individualized. You keep using the term hearing impaired. We in the deaf community tend to say we are deaf or hard of hearing. When you use the word hearing and then the word impaired, that implies that we're impaired in some way, and we don't look at ourselves as disabled. We function just like everybody else does. So people in the media sometimes have that misconception, and they love that word, hearing impaired, but we prefer to be called deaf or hard of hearing. As for communication, let the deaf person guide you when you're talking with them. Sometimes they may prefer to speech read, and they'll ask you to slow down your speech. Sometimes they like to write back and forth. So they'll usually let the hearing person know how they would like to communicate. And what's most important is to let the deaf person be an individual. They've got their own rights. If they prefer to write back and forth, that's fine. Lack of speech does not indicate lack of intelligence. Visual language is the way they have learned and grown, and some people speak well and some don't. It varies, but they're deaf, and I have some friends who are with cochlear implants. They're still deaf. They have a hearing aid. I still consider them deaf. So we're all part of the deaf community, and people, when they come to this school, interact with each other, and they go home. Remember, everybody has to have a community. They go home and they want to enjoy their community. They become a member of their deaf community, but during the day they work with hearing people as well. So they go shopping and they interact with hearing people on a daily basis just like everybody else. I would tell them first to try to learn the language that's used in the deaf community. I think if they are to teach American Sign Language to their child, and they are able to establish the bond and love them as they would love any other child, when the child grows up and may become interested in having a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, then that's fine. There's a lot of misunderstandings in thinking that if you use sign language, you'll never learn to speak, and that's simply not true. A lot of deaf people have learned speech, and they learned sign language first, just as I did, and my wife as well. She used sign language from day one because she's from a deaf family, and she has excellent speech. So there's a lot of misunderstanding in the public thinking that sign language is going to retard speech development, and it's just simply not true. It actually helps to enhance the development of speech. So that's one common misunderstanding that I would like to be cleared up for people, that sign language would help to enhance your speech abilities. So I would encourage parents to bond with their child in the beginning days and years of their lives. That is very important to do that through language, and then they develop and become successful members of our community. Most of my experience in working with people who have Usher syndrome is that we try to sign close to them, and we have a smaller signing space so that they can see, and eventually when they can't see at all, then we use that, as I mentioned, the tactile sign language, hand over hand. So fortunately, sign language is well established when they grow up. Then eventually when they have to resort to tactile signing, they will be able to do so. We know of a lot of national comedians. We have organizations like MDA, the Michigan Deaf Association, who has conventions, and they invite deaf comedians to come and give us entertainment. We have Michigan Deaf Pageant, where the women compete to be Miss Deaf Michigan, and they can go on to the national level. We have all kinds of groups. We have a snowmobiles club for the deaf. We have the Flint Association of the Deaf. We have ski clubs. Of course, we have the motorcycle groups for people like me. There are a lot of different opportunities out there to suit the needs of anybody's entertainment. Well, as far as other countries, we use international sign language at times, or we do a lot of gesturing in order to communicate. Like when we say tomorrow, we would say, the sun is coming up and around again tomorrow. Or if we want to say 7 days, we would do this. We would mime the sun going around the earth, 7 times. So we do a lot of gesturing, and it's fun to do those kinds of things. But when you go to conferences and you see international sign language, it's sometimes a struggle. I don't get 100% of what they're saying, and then when talking with other people who may be next to me from Germany, they have totally different sign language. So, and the French people are easier to communicate because most of our language comes from France. So we're able to communicate more with them than we are from people from Germany. So international conferences for the deaf that happen are really fun, and it's very interesting in learning how different cultures communicate and live in the world. Some deaf people that I know of have established travel agencies as a business, and they get deaf people together and set up a cruise for deaf people. They provide interpreters. They've gone to the Caribbean and Alaska, and those are very enjoyable cruises from the people that I've spoken to. I haven't been on one myself with a group of deaf people, but I have gone with family. But what's nice to know about those cruises is I'm allowed to bring my Harley, so if I can do that, then I'll be all set. So that's where my wife and I have fun. My wife has a Harley too, so we're
cool.
That's great.
Well, for several years in the Flint area, for many years I should say, GM was a major employer for deaf people. They made their homes here in Flint. But those areas of opportunity are decreasing with technology changing the way they are. So now they are going on to higher education and finding jobs by getting higher degrees. So manufacturing doesn't have the jobs that it did before. So we do support the community and make sure that we foster the idea of going on to higher education and getting a degree so they can become, gainfully employed and tax-paying citizens just like everyone else. You mean out in the community when they go shopping and things like that? Well, most of the time when we go in to an establishment, deaf people know how to communicate. Sometimes they will write back and forth, sometimes they will rely on speech reading, and once people get used to a deaf voice, it becomes easier for them. Where I live, I go to our community Home Depot. They sometimes have people on staff who know signs, so when I go there for the little trainings that they do, they're able to include me in that. So the attitude is really changing about those kinds of issues. I was provided interpreters throughout my children's upbringing in the Fenton schools. The city offices, if I've asked for interpreters, they've always been provided. So the attitudes have changed a lot over the years, and interpreting services are being provided in all the governmental agencies as well. Well, I'm not sure about international services. When I've been to other countries like Germany, France, and Italy, what I've noticed here in America, we have the Americans with Disability Act. So if we go into a hotel room, it comes with a kit where we have flashing lights and things like that are provided. Other countries don't provide that. And I've heard that there are struggles for them to find jobs in America. A lot of deaf people are go on to higher learning and higher paying jobs. So I have seen some frustration in other countries. I realize that America is really a wonderful country, and it's a land of opportunities for everybody. So I'm very happy to be from the United States. You can bet on that. They allow you to be anything you want to be in this country. We use video phones. If you see right here, I've got one on my desk. We can make a call to another deaf person and see them on computer, whereas we used to use the TTY where we'd have to type back and forth. Or we can call, if we want to call a hearing person, we use the interpreter relay service, video relay service. And I can order a pizza just like you would call and order a pizza from home. I do that from my video phone. So Technology is wonderful for deaf people today. I have a pager, for example, right here. And this is how I keep in touch with everybody. And because of this invention, we keep in contact with each other. Hearing people use cell phones, we use our pagers, and we keep in contact with each other that way. You're talking about people who have hearing and then as they get older have a loss. Yes. We have services, Communication Access Center, which is here on campus, which provides services for senior citizens if they need help with their hearing aids or devices to help them hear better. We send them to the appropriate agencies to make sure that they're getting the appropriate services and appropriate hearing aids. If they need other types of services, we have those services as well. In Flint, I'm not sure about the rest of the state, but in Flint we're very committed to providing services for the seniors in our area.